Good morning. Good morning, gentlemen. Happy Friday. Let's take a moment, please, and be quiet. Find a little focus for the morning. This morning, the responsorial psalm at Mass said, "Go out to all the world and share the good news." Last night in this space, we welcomed parents from the class of 2022 to the St. Louis U High community. And in welcoming them to the community, we reminded them of two passages of scripture that are found on the hallway just east of our commons. What good does it profit a man to gain the whole world and to lose his soul? And to whom much has been given, more will be expected. Welcome to this Common Good Day Assembly that is focused in our bicentennial year on our school theme this year of Catholic social teaching, the common good, and our goal to promote this aspect of our faith in the very lives that we live. We are fortunate to have with us today many alumni who sat in these same classrooms, who walked these same halls, who have come back to give us their witness of these aspirational statements of what it means to live for the common good. Please join me in taking a moment to thank our alumni who are here from all over the country to speak with us today. As well, I wish to take a moment and recognize those alumni who are with you young men every day, that are represented on the faculty, staff, and administration of SLUH, and who also, in their daily work as educators forming you in this tradition, help form the common good. Please join me in recognizing those alums who are members of our faculty and staff. In our bicentennial year, we come together every day at school at the Backer Memorial. This campus we enjoy was a memorial gift to honor George Backer, a graduate of 1869. Given by his widow, Mrs. Anna Backer, we reflect today that this is the 5th campus of St. Louis University High School in our history. Yet it's been here for 93 years. This campus, this history is a powerful witness to so many who have come before us, who have made this school possible for 200 years. Appropriately, the highest recognition that is given to an alumnus of St. Louis University High School is entitled the Backer Award. The Backer Award is presented at the discretion of the St. Louis U High president. It is awarded to a deserving SLUH alumnus, either living or deceased. And the award is presented to those who embody in outstanding fashion the mission of SLUH, derived from the Jesuit idea that man is a free son of God who develops and utilizes his talents so that he has more to give others. In short, striving to do more in every endeavor and doing it all for the greater glory of God. Backer nominees shall have achieved outstanding success in one or more of the following areas: service to their family, their church, their fellow man, contributions to their business and profession, leadership in civic or social work, and the promotion of intellectual or cultural pursuits. It is my distinct pleasure to begin this Common Good Assembly by conferring the Backer Award on 3 alumni, whom I am fortunate to know well. I will present them to these men individually, and then a short video will follow that I will invite your attention to. I am most grateful that they and their guests can be with us today to reinforce the message we celebrate in considering the common good. Each man is a man of great competence and a deep prayer life. Mr. John Wunderlich of the class of 1966, please join me on stage, John. John is here today with his wife of 29 years, Jean, his children, Brian and Michael, their wives, Crystal and Mindy. John's father was a 1929 graduate of St. Louis U High, and I think it's fair to say he probably knew Mrs. Backer. John attended St. Louis University and graduated magna cum laude with a major in accounting and a minor in business law. He was a member of the Pi Delta Theta fraternity. John's professional background is as a certified public accountant. He has worked for a Big Five firm and also was a partner in a local CPA firm as a tax specialist. John was also the executive vice president and CFO at Fred Weber Incorporated, a member of their board of directors and one of 3 people to make up the executive committee. The story of John's commitment to the school's mission partners his professional competency and his willingness to place that intellectual talent at the service of many and varied organizations that care for people in need and shape the community. Indeed, John is a person familiar with SLUH because he is a longtime alumni board member and board of trustees member, including being our former board chair. But his service at SLUH is only a small window of all he gives in the community. In 2009, John was recognized as one of the top 50 community shapers in St. Charles County. An avid horseman as well, example of Mr. Wunderlich's commitment to the common good include 3 years as corporate coordinator for his United Way campaign, 5 years on the board of Emmaus Homes that support the mentally challenged, 18 years on the board of Kreider Health Center, an organization serving mental health needs that cover the largest geography of any mental health organization in Missouri. During this time, John was recognized with their Heroes Award and was so deeply involved that at the same time he was board chair, he also called their bingo every Monday for a period of years. 10 years of service on the board of the Salvation Army St. Charles County, where he was both board chair and worked construction to renovate living quarters for the homeless. 18 years on the board of SSM St. Joseph Foundation Board, the largest employer of St. Charles City employees, where he served as board chair. 2007, along with 3 business partners, he built an assisted living facilities which received awards from the St. Louis Alzheimer's Association for caring for patients with dementia by creating an enclosed outdoor space to maximize visual natural stimulation while keeping patients safe. 9 years on the board of Boys Hope, Girls Hope, serving as their treasurer. He tutors students at Loyola Academy. He has taken coursework in spiritual direction in the spiritual exercises, and he is a devoted husband, father, and grandfather. Please join me in congratulating John Wunderlich on the Backer Award. May I please draw your attention at this time to our video? You have to stay.
I'm grateful for this award. I feel blessed to have had the opportunity to serve so many years in various capacities at St. Louis U High. Currently, I'm on the board of trustees, and I can tell you that the young men here continue to excel academically and athletically and in faith formation. Before each board of trustees meeting, there's a period of reflection referred to as an Ignatian moment, when the board thinks about Ignatian principles and how they relate to the mission of the school. When Father Paul Sheridan was president of St. Louis U High, he started the practice of having a senior come to a couple board meetings a year as part of this Ignatian moment. I was always moved, more so than their recounting what they'd done academically and maybe athletically, was how every single young man always talked about how much this school had done for spiritual formation. And of course, that doesn't happen by accident. This school continues to be blessed, as it has over the centuries, with an excellent faculty, very dedicated men and women who spend their lives in forming these young men in furtherance of the mission of the school. So for that reason, my wife Jean and I joyfully donate as much as we can every year to St. Louis U High, because we feel we are giving to the world, really. Because each year this school sends forth about another 250 young men who are very gifted, highly educated, but most importantly, committed to being men for others. Thanks again for this great award.
Mr. Tom Santel from the class of 1976, please join me on stage. Tom is joined today by his wife, Mary Pat, his brother, Don Santel, from the class of 1978, who came in from California, his 1976 classmate and friend, Chris Fava, and his wife, Mary, and longtime SLUH faculty member and dear friend, Mr. Jim Ratterman. Tom and his brother, Don, are the sons of Walter and Catherine Santel. Tom's father was a member of the Teamsters Union in St. Louis, and together with Kathy knew they wanted a Jesuit education for their sons. Tom is a graduate of two universities, St. Louis University in accounting and the University of Missouri St. Louis with an MBA. In 2011, he did a fellowship year at Harvard in their Advanced Leadership Initiative program. After graduating from SLUH, where he was proudly chief editor of the Prep News under the direction of Mr. Ratterman, he began his career as a certified public accountant at Ernst & Winnie. Soon thereafter, he became a budget analyst for Anheuser-Busch. He finished his career at Anheuser-Busch as the president and CEO of Anheuser-Busch International and the vice president for corporate planning. Tom is an avid reader with a particular interest in history. Since the late 1980s, he has made retreats at White House Jesuit Retreat. His experience with Jesuits during his postgraduate days, along with his passion for reading, piqued his interest in Jesuit spirituality. A few examples of Mr. Santel's commitment to the common good include 18 years on the St. Louis University High School Board of Trustees, twice being board chair. And he was the board chair who led the Presidential Search Committee to welcome Mr. Alan Carruthers, who we are fortunate to have join us today, who will become president this summer. Welcome, Mr. Carruthers. Tom was a member of the SLUH High Alumni Board. He is a member of Boys Hope, Girls Hope International, a board member of the Grace Hill Settlement Housing, which emphasizes work with Head Start educational programming. A board member of Homeworks, a program for public schools specializing in teacher home visits to students in need. He's a former board member of KETC Channel 9, Public Broadcast Systems. He's a former board member of the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. Following his career at Anheuser-Busch, Mr. Santel chose to enroll in the Harvard Advanced Leadership Initiative, which seeks to take high-level executive skills and utilize them for specific service in the community. Upon completion of that program, Mr. Santel worked for BJC Healthcare, where he founded and ran for 5 years a program that is now housed at the St. Louis Children's Hospital entitled Raising St. Louis. Raising St. Louis is a program from pregnancy to 3rd grade with an emphasis on early childhood health, development, and medical care and socialization, which seeks to help low-income families. As a family man, Tom is a loving husband to his wife of almost 36 years and a proud father to his daughter Laura, who is currently studying at the Harvard Business College, and his son Jim, class of 2008, who is currently studying at Cambridge University in England. And as they were not able to be present with us today, we are doing a live stream of this video so that they are with us, in fact. Please join me in congratulating Mr. Tom Santel. And again, at this time, please draw your attention to the video screen.
I am deeply honored to receive the Backer Award. This award is especially gratifying because it comes from an institution that has played a central role in my life and in the life of my family, St. Louis University High School. My parents made it a high priority to give their two boys the educational opportunities they had not received. One day, when I was a 13-year-old eighth grader, my mother told me she had heard St. Louis U High was an excellent school and that we should take a look at it. When I visited SLUH for the first time at the annual open house in the fall of 1971, I had no idea I was beginning a special and lifelong relationship. Walking through those corridors, which seemed ancient even back then, I sensed both a rich history and an exciting path to future possibilities. It was clear to me from the start that SLUH, like many great high schools, was a place where one could explore and develop knowledge in almost every subject and interest. But what truly set the school apart was the Jesuit spirituality that tied our pursuits to the greater purpose of discovering God's plan for each of us. SLUH's faculty, both Jesuit and lay, taught us to set high standards of excellence and to always put forth our best efforts. They knew we could accomplish more than we ourselves thought, and they pushed us to prove their point. What made SLUH so special back then is still alive and well in its halls today: people. There were many teachers and administrators who had a great influence on my life. People like Father Ralph Houlihan, Father Rich Bailey, Father Bob Weiss, Charlie Conway, Jim Ratterman, Sister Kathleen Casey, and so many others. I learned and benefited from my classmates who had many different and interesting talents and strengths. SLUH has always drawn students from throughout the region and from all walks of life. Finding myself in a group of 200 smart 14-year-old boys with their different intellectual curiosities, points of view, and passions opened my eyes to new possibilities. At a very young age, these classmates allowed me to expand my horizons in a way that would have been impossible in a neighborhood school. St. Louis U High is the only institution with which I have maintained a relationship for almost my entire life. Unlike other schools and workplaces that are now in my past, something about SLUH still calls to me and still challenges me. I've had the opportunity to be a SLUH student, alumnus, parent, and board member. In every interaction with the school, I have found wonderful people and a continued invitation to experience God's love and His calling. I've also come to appreciate that SLUH's commitment to offering a first-class Jesuit education to any boy of ability, regardless of his family's financial resources, is increasingly rare, and therefore increasingly critical in our society. There are many people I have to thank for this award. David Laughlin, our president, whom I greatly admire for the selfless way he embodies the Jesuit values of love of God and service to others. The faculty and staff of SLUH, who daily dedicate their lives to the education and care of our students. And my family, my wife Mary Pat, and our two children, Laura and Jim, who have provided me with great love, guidance, and support. St. Louis U High and the Jesuits have been a major influence in my life. Some people measure their success by the distance they travel from their places of origin. I would like to measure mine by how closely I can come to achieving the values I first learned all those years ago at SLUH.
Mr. Mark Wilhelm from the class of 1972. Mark, please join me. Mark is joined today by his wife Debbie, their son Nick of the class of 2007, their daughter Brianne, and their two grandchildren Luke and Amelia. We also want to mention Patrick, Brianne's husband, who couldn't be here today. Mark's father is a member of the class of 1935 and was a decorated executive officer of a naval destroyer during World War II. Mark grew up in Baden and worked starting at age 8 at his family dry goods store and Catholic school uniform store. In his Holy Cross parish, he was an altar server and sang in the choir, and while he was at SLUH, he was a member of the varsity swimming and water polo teams. He graduated from the University of Missouri St. Louis with his degree in accounting. While he was there, secretary of the campus student council and his fraternity's president. He also completed an MBA at St. Louis University in finance. In December of 1977, he began working as an underwriter at Safety National Insurance. Nearly his whole career with the same company, in 2010, he became the CEO, instrumental in moving the company from a $1.5 million company to its present net worth of $2 billion. Examples of Mr. Wilhelm's commitment to the common good include that while growing his company's business success, he has also been instrumental in establishing its culture, involving days of service programs where employees take paid time to be involved in the community in programs locally like Crisis Nursery, Habitat for Humanity, the Food Bank, Boys Hope, Girls Hope, and Support Dogs. They have also, as a company, helped lead endeavors in programs like the Variety Club, Pathways to Independence, programming for special needs individuals, the St. Patrick's Center for the Homeless, Backstoppers, Komen, and the Peanut Butter Project, which seeks to support nutritional resources for those countries where starvation is rampant. His leadership includes Safety National being recognized for 5 years running as the insurance industry's best place to work, and also the past 2 years, he has been recognized in achievement in the St. Louis Green Business Challenge. Personally, Mark and his wife, Debbie, who will be married 40 years the day after tomorrow. So thank you for your witness to marriage. You can do it again. Again, thank you for your witness to marriage and happy anniversary. They have prioritized being involved in their faith lives, in their parish, and in their children's schools, St. Anselm, Visitation, and SLUH. There, Mark has been a youth sports coach for children, a member of parish advisory councils. While Nick was here, he was president of the SLUH Fathers Club. He has been a member of our board of trustees, including our chair. He's a member of the International Board of Boys Hope, Girls Hope. He is also a member of the national board for an organization called Kids Chance. It's an organization that seeks to provide resources for the education of children who have had parents who were injured in their line of work. Locally, Mark has been involved in many civic and community endeavors, including the St. Louis Zoo, the Muni, the St. Patrick's Center, many pro-life causes, veterans groups, the Alzheimer's Association, and Cardinal Glennon. Mark is a loving husband to Debbie and their children, Brianne and her husband Patrick and son Nick. But it is quite certain that the love of his life are these two extremely well-behaved grandchildren, Luke and Amelia. Please join me in congratulating Mark Wilhelm. May I please draw your attention to our video screens at this time?
Hi, my name is Mark Wilhelm, St. Louis SLUH High Class of 1972. I'm very honored and grateful to be receiving the school's highest recognition, the Backer Award, especially in this bicentennial year, 2018. I'm also very honored and privileged to be receiving this award with my respected friends and fellow trustees, John Wunderlich and Tom Santel. I'm also deeply appreciative that my family can share this award with me. My wife, Debbie, a former Cashbach co-chair, my daughter, Brianne, and son-in-law, Patrick, both graduates and postgraduates of St. Louis University. My son, Nick, St. Louis SLUH High Class of 2007. And I'm sure my dad, George, class of 1935, is smiling down with pride on this. When I came to St. Louis SLUH High, I heard a lot about Anna Backer and her generosity to St. Louis SLUH High, and how her generosity made this school more affordable for the students and the families at the high school. I probably didn't appreciate that as much as the time as I probably should have. The things on the minds of a 14 to 18-year-old young man is things like homework, projects, tests, jobs and working, and probably girls. But as you grow and mature, and as you students matriculate from this high school and from college and have careers and families of your own, maybe you'll come to appreciate what 200 years of benefactors, 200 years of great leadership, and what your families, your parents, your teachers have given you in this high school. I, for one, am very grateful for what St. Lucie High has given me. I've been very successful financially, but more importantly, I've been blessed with a great family and blessed with a satisfying and happy life. If I step back from St. Lucie High and think about what are the most valuable lessons I learned, it's difficult to do because there were so many. But one obvious one comes to mind, and that's time management and discipline. Those are things that benefit you throughout life. And as a student here, I was working on weekends. I played 2 varsity sports. I realized to survive the rigors of St. Lucie High, I would have to manage my time well and plan ahead, set priorities, etc. Those are essential prerequisites in any career, but especially business, where every minute counts in this competitive world. The other takeaway I'd mention is a little bit more subtle, but much more impactful. And that's that I wanted to live a purposeful life. In college, that took the form of rising to be the president of my fraternity and also the secretary of the student council. In my jobs after graduating college, I tried to make those companies better places. When I was dating, I realized I was looking for someone that shared my values and also my energy to do things, and hopefully raise a family with the same values. As our children grew, Debbie and I seemed to volunteer for just about everything. We volunteered for fundraising, we volunteered for coaching, we volunteered for chaperoning, and one chaperoning job I'd never volunteer for again is those overnight lock-ins. Those were the worst. But anyway, I digress. In my company of 500 employees and over $1 billion of revenue, I can insist on core values like integrity. I can insist that we put the needs of our customers and our employees at the forefront of everything we do. I can insist that we're leaders in things like philanthropy, diversity, wellness, and sustainability. And like SLUH, I think we can work with our employees to be a perennial best places to work. Debbie and I continue to volunteer our time, talent, treasure to many causes, but we especially focus on educational betterment. Not only St. Lucie High, but other Jesuit causes like Boys Hope, Girls Hope, Loyola Academy, Access Academies, etc. We firmly believe that the most formative years of a young person's life are those junior high and high school years. And that's why we remain devoted to St. Lucie High. I'd like to close with words from Jesus from the Gospel of Luke. And those words are, "From whom much is given, much will be demanded." As we reflect on those words, we realize that everyone in this audience has been given much, and consequently, much is expected. We need to be men for others. AMDG, thanks for listening.
Please join me in one more congratulations to Tom, John, and Mark. Thank you. I'm 1 minute ahead of schedule. Take a 15-second stand up and sit down break. Go. All right, and time. Thank you. Go out. Thank you, gentlemen. 15 seconds is up. Go out to all the world and share the good news. For our Con Good Day, we are fortunate to have a keynote speaker back with us from the class of 1970, Professor Michael Ham. Since 2003, you can clap for him, sure. Since 2003, Mike has been the C.S. Mott Professor of Sustainable Agriculture at Michigan State University. He was also the founding director of the Michigan State University Center for Regional Food Systems and is now its senior fellow. He has a BA in biology from Northwestern University and a PhD in human nutrition from the University of Minnesota. Mike then spent 4 years as a research fellow at Columbia University's Institute of Human Nutrition. Prior to moving to Michigan State University, he spent 19 years on the nutritional sciences faculty of Rutgers University. He was the co-founder and director of the New Jersey Urban Ecology Program and founding director of the Cook Student Organic Farm at Rutgers. Over the years, Mike's research interests have shifted from nutritional biochemistry and sustainability in the food system. Mike's primary research area encompasses regional and sustainable food systems. He teaches Introduction to Sustainability in his home department, the Department of Community Sustainability. Mike was a consultant on sustainability at the most recent United States Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee and works with a program of the United Nations Environment Program focused on sustainable and nourishing foods. It is our distinct pleasure to welcome for our Common Good Day our keynote speaker from the class of 1970, Professor Michael Ham.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be back here. And I have to say, after listening to what the three of you have accomplished leading up to your Backer Memorial Awards, I'm humbled. Well done, young men. Well done. And I'll say young, okay? I want to thank you all for this great honor on the occasion of the 200th anniversary convocation. When I received the letter from Father Hill to deliver this talk, I was frankly stunned. I have done a lot of talks, keynotes, and lectures in my career, yet none match the honor I attached to this one. As you will hear, SLUH is my fulcrum and the place that I return to in my mind quite often. Not because it's the highlight of my life, but because it's the point from which I have grown and worked towards being my own person and comfortable in my own spirituality. And I stand here with some trepidation. My first thoughts in preparing this is that I am the wrong man to deliver this address. I am certainly not the smartest person in the room. Let's see if this works. Yep. When I went to SLUH from 66 to 70, homerooms were tracked by entrance exam performance and grades in K through 8. I was in homeroom E. SLUH was no cakewalk for me, but it was the challenge that keeps on giving. For an out-of-towner, I visited the U High a fair number of times in the years since 1970. The place has certainly never looked better. A couple of months ago, I was here and my classmate, Matt Shudo, you all recognize it? Graciously gave me a tour of the theater facilities. Phenomenal. I'll show a couple of pictures later that will give you an idea of what we worked with in the 60s. A few years ago, I played a pickup soccer game on the turf field and flashed back to going over to Forest Park for soccer practice. In the short time I have here today, I want to try and weave 4 narratives. First, a sense of why SLUH and the Jesuits have been and continue to be pivotal in my development. A sense of my trajectory and some of the twists and turns my life has taken. A sense of Pope Francis's encyclical letter on ecology, Laudato Si, in the context of Pope Benedict's, the 16th encyclical, Caritas in Veritate, Charity and Truth, on global development and progress towards the common good. And finally, a sense of how Laudato Si magnifies my current thinking. SLUH has been here for 200 years. From our founding in 1818 by Bishop de Burgh and moved to Oakland Avenue in 1924, we have a long and storied history with much to be grateful for. For all of us who are either SLUH alum or current students, our academic time on campus amounts to 2% of the school's existence. We encompass both a very small percentage of its totality and a significant amount. Each generations of classes are shaped by different social, political, and economic circumstances. Your 2% time here is very different from mine. My senior year, tuition was $800. Now it's not. In 1970, the federal minimum wage was $1.45. 550 hours of minimum wage work, you could pay tuition. A summer's worth of work. Now it's $7.25 an hour and takes 2,300 hours, more than a year's work. My senior year at Northwestern University's tuition was $3,000. Now it's $53,000. For baby boomers, it took on average about 306 hours of minimum wage job to pay for an average college's annual tuition. For millennials, about 4,500 hours. In 1970, there were 3.7 billion people in the world. Today, there's about 7.6 billion. In 1970, the first Earth Day occurred. The 48th occurs Sunday. 2020 will be the 50th anniversary and also my 50th reunion. The Clean Water Act was signed by Richard Nixon in 1972 as the Cuyahoga River periodically caught fire. Today, people fish the river, and there's action to significantly weaken the Clean Water Act. Obviously you, didn't want that yet. Obviously you, the student body, live in very different times. My time growing up in St. Louis in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. My parents' generation has been labeled the greatest generation, and most were born right around the 1929 Depression and market crash. We existed in a post-World War II baby boom and economic expansion. I grew up on the north side, Bell Fountain Neighbors in Bissell Hills, and then Florissant in Blackjack. I went to St. Jerome, which opened in 1952. The parish closed in 2005. My first 11 years, our family was my mom, my dad, my sister, and me. My mom and my sister and my wife and my 2 nieces are both here today. And I realized this picture looks like there's somebody behind the camera saying, if you laugh, I'm gonna slap you. But in fact, I love this picture. And then my brother came along, my brother David, about 11 years later, and we were a family of 5. I had a fairly standard, white, middle-class Catholic upbringing. I spent my time playing baseball and soccer, water skiing in the summer, Boy Scouts, Alpha Players Community Theater Group, whose first production was in 1959, church choir, and altar boy with Mass in Latin. My dad, Herman, or Bud as he was known, was busy making his way in electrical engineering and avionics, while my mom, Jan, kept us and the house sane and tempered the males in the house. We certainly weren't what you would call well-to-do as I was growing up, but there's always enough money for us to buy whatever books we wanted off the monthly order form that came home from school, as long as we promised to read them. In the post-war boom, if you were white, educated, male, and not afraid of work, you could grow with the economy and make enough to support the family and send your kids to good Catholic high schools. Dad was gone more often than not as he worked his way up at McDonnell Douglas, the culmination being named VP of Avionic Engineering and playing a major role in the development of the F-15. There are 3 where were you questions from the period that marked many of us. Where were you the day President Kennedy was shot on November 22nd, 1963? I was home sick from school watching TV and yelled at my mom that the president had been shot. Where were you when the Beatles first played on the Ed Sullivan Show in February 9th of 1964? I was at the Conlon's house helping building a set for an Alpha Players show. And finally, where were you when the Reverend Martin Luther King was assassinated in April 4th of 1968? I was on a public bus on my way home from school. The point is, I had a fairly standard, suburban, middle-class, white Catholic upbringing and lived in a pretty good bubble. This, by the way, back in the day, the SLUH CBC football game used to be played at Busch Stadium. So, with crowds of up to 35,000 people. I'll let that settle in for a second. Since then, my life has taken a number of twists and turns that could appear random and in some cases may have been. But there has always been a trajectory in which my Jesuit education played a pivotal role in helping me grow in various ways. I gained a number of senses from my time here at SLUH: a sense of exploration, a sense of gratitude, a sense of giving, a sense of questioning, a sense of justice, a sense of faith, and a sense of center, with guys from around the city coming together at Backer Memorial. But first I had to get there, and then I had to stay there. English and languages were not my strength in school. In fact, I had to attend a summer English program prior to the start of my freshman year to formally be admitted. Then I flunked Latin and French my first quarter, so I was academically ineligible for soccer. I commuted about 3 hours round trip each day for my first 3 years. My mom drove me to the first bus, a layover waiting for the second bus to take me to at the city line, and a short walk from the Kings Highway stop. Then Jerry Repovich, Mark Milburn, and I were able to get a carpool going for our senior year. Jerry had his own car with an 8-track cassette player. Probably most of you haven't heard of those. And I remember the battles over music. Mark was a Doors aficionado and Jerry wanted all things Motown. After I got off of academic probation and stayed off, I ran track and played soccer. Then I turned to theater in my junior year after spending years around the Alpha Players and in church choir. This is me in 1968 in a play called Life with Father, and that was a college student, so I was really in love. And a highlight my junior year was playing Charlie Brown in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown as part of Joe Schulte's MFA project at St. Louis University. But senior year was really pivotal for me and where I would like to spend a bit of time. In that year, I found my place and playing pool or wall ball downstairs become much less frequent. I never did sit in the junior or senior smokers down there. In that year, we performed Oh, What a Lovely War, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and Celebration. In addition, I took advanced biology the first time it was taught at SLUH, and Mark Milburn, Keith Brightfield, and I went to the first Earth Day at Washington University. 69-70 both laid the basis for much of whom I have become professionally, as well as launched me on a road of exploration. I'd like to reflect a bit on Celebration, Advanced Biology, and Earth Day 1970. I've come back to them often in my head for the memories and the synchronicity with my work today. Celebration was first performed on Broadway without much success in early 69. We staged it in early 70. The stage setting is bare. The characters include Potemkin, the narrator, Angel, Mr. Rich, and Orphan, yours truly. The revelers provided the chorus and much of the atmosphere created in the staging. To quote from Adam Hetrick in Playbill from a 2007 revival, quote, "At the musical's core is the struggle between youth and old age, innocence and corruption, love and ambition, and poverty and wealth, as Angel tries to decide if she would be better served by her feelings for Orphan or Rich's willingness to fulfill her every dream." Early in the play, Orphan reveals that the orphanage from which he comes was bought and destroyed by Mr. Rich. Orphan is on the quest to get him to restore the garden at the orphanage. Orphan has a piece of stained glass that represents the eye of God and regularly sings the sun, the sun, the sun, which I shall not sing again, while holding it up. In Act 1, the garden gets restored and then destroyed over land ownership. Does Mr. Rich own it or does he not? In Act 2, Mr. Rich dies at the stroke of midnight. As the play concludes, Angel and Orphan stand with his garden destroyed and her dreams of stardom more than in doubt. Potemkin offers a prayer for their survival, and they walk into the future, afraid yet determined. Destruction and regeneration cycle throughout the play. I think you have to call it a highlight when you first perform it, and then get to perform it again a couple times months later to raise money for a trip to Indiana University and the National Thespian Convention, where you then perform it in front of a full theater that includes the play's author. And then there was the juxtaposition of advanced biology with Earth Day. Mark, Keith, and I went and heard Dr. Barry Commoner, then on the WashU faculty, talk about the 4 laws of ecology. Everything is connected to everything else. Everything must go somewhere. Nature knows best. There is no such thing as a free lunch. I came back from Earth Day needing to do a final research project for advanced biology and decided to do a survey of the senior class on how much pollution our families generated in a year. One chart in my final paper was a figure of all the full trash cans generated by 212 families in a year, recalculated as the depth it would fill in the football field. It was deep. And that's how I left SLUH. It's actually a cast get-together from Celebration. That's how I left SLUH, with a performance of Celebration still to do at Indiana University and a research project on the class of 70's annual pollution in my portfolio. Now let me step aside from my history and talk a bit about Pope Francis. His Laudato Si, or Praised Be, encyclical letter on the ecology is an absolutely marvelous piece of reflection and thought concerning our roles as Christians and humans in being stewards of the earth and our responsibility for each other. My intention throughout is not to selectively excerpt for personal justification, nor to skew what he is intending. My intention is to be true to the document. When I first read this in 2015, I was bluntly thunderstruck because it spoke to me personally, spiritually, and professionally. And to be harshly honest, I also know that I don't come near living up to what he says. As I studied it preparing this talk, I realized yet again just how flawed I am, but also recognized that even at 66 years of age, I keep learning and trying to improve myself, trying to live an ever more Christian life in the way he has outlined in this encyclical. Pope Francis draws throughout this encyclical from a number of documents, especially Pope Benedict XVI's Caritas in Veritate, as the common good is wrapped up in our role in ecological and human sustainability. This encyclical forces us to ask ourselves as Catholics, as Christians, as Homo sapiens, and I quote, "What kind of world do we want to leave to those who come after us, to children who are now growing up?" This question does not have to do with the environment alone and in isolation. The issue cannot be approached piecemeal. When we ask ourselves what kind of world we want to leave behind, we think in the first place of its general direction, its meaning, and its values. Unless we struggle with these deeper issues, I do not believe that our concern for ecology will produce significant results. But if those issues are courageously faced, we are led inexorably to ask other pointed questions. What is the purpose of life in this world? Why are we here? What is the goal of our work and all our efforts? What need does the earth have of us? It is no longer enough then simply to state that we should be concerned for future generations. We need to see that this is at stake is our own dignity. Leaving an inhabitable planet to future generations is first and foremost up to us. The issue is one which dramatically affects us, for it has to do with the ultimate meaning of our earthly sojourn. End quotes. Let me consider this from my perspective and my work. As you have heard, I've been at Michigan State University since January of '03 and hold the C.S. Mott Chair of Sustainable Agriculture and was the founding director of the Center for Regional Food Systems. So food, agriculture, and sustainability is what I think about, work on, and write about nearly all the time. The question that keeps popping up is, can we feed 9 billion people sustainably? The simple answer is, it depends. Could be yes, could be no. The devil is in the details. I appreciate Pope Francis when he wrote, quote, that if we acknowledge the value and the fragility of nature, and at the same time our God-given abilities, we can finally leave behind the modern myth of unlimited material progress. A fragile world entrusted by God to human care challenges us to devise intelligent ways of redirecting, developing, and limiting our power. Feeding 9 billion people sustainably and with healthy food depends on a number of achievements across human development, human behavior, and our work for the common good. In a very brief time, I'm going to talk about 4 significant changes we need to make in human activity, 3 interconnected processes and practices of the food system, and 3 ways to approach the food system structurally. Specifically, for human activity, this means a shift in human dietary patterns, significant global and local efforts around social justice, a major decrease in food waste, and appropriate technological development. I think it is reasonable to say that we should have 2 fundamental goals, global food system goals: universal food and nutrition security and a greatly reduced environmental footprint. Neither are near where they should be. Currently, the globe has about 795 million hungry people, 1.9 billion obese or overweight, and 250 to 500,000 children per year go blind because of vitamin A deficiency. The global environmental footprint for the food system needs to be decreased drastically. This, by the way, is how much cooking fuel is moved around rural Malawi in East Africa. There is less fresh water per person, with 70% of human fresh water used for agricultural irrigation, often with very inefficient systems. Or as Pope Francis says, quote, "Access to safe drinkable water is a basic and universal human right, since it is essential to human survival of and as such is a condition for the exercise of other human rights. Our world has a grave social debt towards the poor who lack access to drinking water because they are denied the right to a life consistent with their inalienable dignity." Now, although it is politically convenient to deny the human contribution to atmospheric carbon and climate change, the science, frankly, is incontrovertible at this point. We live in the Anthropocene era. There is also a nutrition transition occurring throughout the globe as development proceeds. Again, we in the US are there and are taking small steps to walk it back. This transition is characterized by an increase in empty calorie consumption and animal product consumption as per capita GDP increases. In many countries, this increasingly leads to over and undernutrition existing side by side. How could we go about increasing food availability globally so that universal food and nutrition security was truly achievable? 3 simultaneous processes and practice changes would be needed. A change in dietary patterns, i.e. general reduction in empty calorie and meat consumption. An increase in production, however, much less than we often think and that we often see in the news, and a decrease in waste. As Pope Francis has said, given the scale of change, it is no longer possible to find a specific, discrete answer for each part of the problem. It is essential to seek comprehensive solutions which consider the interactions within natural systems themselves and with social systems. We are not faced with 2 separate crises, one environmental and the other social, but rather one complex crisis, which is both social and environmental. Strategies for a solution demand an integrated approach to combating poverty, restoring dignity to the underprivileged, and at the same time, protecting nature. Dietary patterns and carrying capacity provides a first approximation of how changing what we eat has the potential to impact the number of people who could be fed. Researchers modeled the US agricultural landscape and estimated the number of people relative to the 2010 US population who could be fed with various diets. Consuming the US current average diet, we can feed about 51% more of the 2010 population than currently exists. With 60% as much animal products, 217%. With 20% as much animal products, 249%. With a lacto-ovo-vegetarian diet, 261%. And with a vegetarian diet, 238%. So the dietary patterns that we consume on average across the country and across the globe impact our ability to answer that question, can we feed 9 billion people sustainably, in the positive? Simultaneous with dietary pattern changes, reducing food waste. The waste points vary depending on where you are in the world. Broadly, it's estimated that about 30% of the total food supply is wasted. This can be in the field due to lack of harvest, at various points in the supply chain due to poor post-harvest management, and in the household. In developing countries, most of the loss is at the point of production and handling, whereas in the developed world, it is largely at the point of consumption. Using Malawi and East Africa as an example is illustrative. This is a typical supply chain that moves food from rural Malawi into Lilongwe, the second largest city. The people sitting on the truck are retail traders going out to the rural aggregation market in the morning to get provisions. When they come back, the traders load their product in the truck bed and sit on the rails. And there's a lot of accidents as people fall out of those trucks when they're going 60 miles an hour down the road. Within the city, most of the food provisioning occurs at these open-air markets. Note that of the nearly 3,000 consumers surveyed at a number of these markets, about 80% usually shop at a market just like this. That is the retail point for their food supply, and do it most often more than 10 or 11 times per week. In other words, they get a bit of money one day, they go shop. They get a bit of money the other day, they go shop. It's a day-to-day existence. Or in the words of Pope Francis, quote, "We have to realize that a true ecological approach always becomes a social approach. It must integrate questions of justice in debates on dietary quality, reducing food waste dramatically and altering production practices to reduce environmental and human health impacts." How can we think about realizing this? How can we take a food system perspective and realize that there are three potential food system structural approaches? First, we can think of, oops, I lost a page, I'm sorry. How can we go about, let me back up. How can we go about increasing food availability globally so that universal food and nutrition security was truly achievable? Three simultaneous process and practice changes would be needed: a change in dietary patterns, an increase in production, and a decrease in waste. I got a little lost. I'm sorry, everybody. I got lost for a second. Okay, so let me just start here. I got my pages mixed up. When we look at ways to think about increasing production, the most common thing that we think about today is sustainable intensification. There are both critics of this and supporters of this. But the main thing that we need to think about is that there are different production practices we can use. One thing that we know from a recent paper is that it would be possible to feed the world with organic production and reduce the environmental impact quite dramatically. However, that organic production would not be sufficient if there was not simultaneously a large decrease in waste of food and a large decrease in meat consumption. So there's a balance between our personal desires and our personal wants and our ability to basically improve the environmental sustainability of the food supply. Independent of the types of production practices, we have typically considered ag nutrients a source to sink resource. That is, phosphorus or nitrogen gets applied to land as a nutrient. The crops get harvested, transported, often processed, and shipped to whatever destination across the globe that they're going to. People eat the food, and human waste is one endpoint of the applied nutrient. Animal waste is the other. In many cases, this is then a waste product that does not get returned to the land. Also, often due to soil erosion and/or water solubility, these nutrients end up in the surface and groundwater, contaminating them and creating add-on environmental and health problems. So what we typically think of is a source to sink mentality with nutrient application for food production. And what we need to think about is a cycling mentality so we preserve those nutrients for future production of food. So everything points to a universal food security and environmental sustainability being possible, but only if we commit to changing dietary patterns. In the developed world, this means stepping back from high meat and empty calorie consumption. And in the developing world, this means minimizing the nutrition transition while improving the dietary quality, reducing food waste dramatically, and altering production practices to reduce environmental and health impacts. Now, how can we think about realizing this? From a food system perspective, I think there are three potential food system structures that we can consider. First, we can have a system that is fully globalized, We can have a system. We can have a system that's fully globalized, we can have a system that's fully localized, and we can have a system that is somewhere in between these two things. For several reasons, I think the latter. I think an integrated, interconnected regional food systems is the most feasible and the most likely to achieve both social justice and environmental sustainability within the framework of global food and nutrition security. What this would mean in much of the developing world is to preserve and enhance existing traditional food systems. And in the developed world, it would mean recreating and re-energizing these regional food systems. I wrote what I'm going to say in just a minute as the opening to the chapter on food and health for a large report from a program under the United Nations Environment Program. My intention was to paint an aspirational scenario of the interactions of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. So imagine, if you will, imagine a future where all forms of malnutrition are eliminated and we have achieved low levels of acute disease. The world is composed of connected webs of cooperation across regions, ensuring diversity, resiliency, and global communication. Food systems embedded in the regions across the globe provide good livelihoods for those engaged in the production, processing, transportation, storage, and marketing of foods, as well as the management of compostable and reusable waste. The food system is doing its part to eliminate poverty and provide decent work and economic growth. Women have the same rights and rewards as men in this system, with strong educational systems, supporting sustainable and healthy consumption patterns. While the majority of people live in urban areas, there are robust urban-rural relationships that ensure food security for all urbanites, and industries supply healthy processed foods, as well as appropriate responsible technology required in the production, processing, storage, and movement of the food supply. Advertising and market placement are skewed to promote healthy dietary patterns. This helps ensure both food and employment security, markedly reducing the threat of urban uprisings, aiding in sustainable city development, and reducing inequalities. The cycle of production and consumption is completed responsibly with the use of renewable materials and energies available to all, and making use of materials and practices that preserve fresh water and provide clean water. Our lands and waters are preserved for humans as well as the flora and fauna we rely upon. All of this ensures that our global food system does not contribute to increasing climate challenge, but rather acts as a tool for resolution. Or as Pope Francis said, in order to continue providing employment, it's imperative to provide an economy which favors productive diversity and business creativity. I realize that that's a bit Pollyannish, but I also realize that it's very doable if we as humans, as Christians, decide to make it so. In other words, we need a coherent way to look at development in the context of both environmental sustainability and social justice for all global citizens. One challenge is to look at the range of environmental challenges simultaneously. Rockstrom and others out of the Stockholm Resiliency Center developed the notion of planetary boundaries. These 9 dimensions frame out our impact on the environment. On the other hand, is framing the dimension of social justice, which are seen in the SDGs. The concept of donut economics was developed by Dr. Kate Rayworth. The planetary boundaries provide the environmental ceiling, the suite of environmental indicators we must not exceed to maintain a planet conducive to us and to other life forms across ecosystems. The inner ring provides the social floor, the suite of human rights that 7.4 billion or 9 billion global citizens all have a basic right to by living in God's kingdom. Or as Pope Francis says, halfway measures simply delay the inevitable disaster. Put simply, it is a matter of redefining our notion of progress, a technological and economic development which does not leave in its wake a better world and an integrally higher quality of life cannot be considered progress, end quote. In the context of donut economics, this means that economic activity needs to operate within the environmental ceiling and the social floor, the economic safe operating space, with profit, markets, and technology in their proper place, in service of environmental sustainability and social development. The UNEP-based project I'm currently involved in, Team Agri-Food, uses a process known as true cost accounting to internalize current externalities in our economic system, like human health and well-being and environmental pollution. But this is not where I started, and it took me the last 25 years to get to this analysis and a much more nuanced perspective than what I have time to present today. As I graduated from SLUH and headed to college, my head was focused on pre-med and biology. The spring of 1970, college campuses around the country had exploded with demonstrations around the Vietnam War. Students were killed at several. I went up the road to Northwestern University, rooming freshman year with my SLUH classmate, Bob Heller. The summer of 71 and 72, I was fortunate to get a job as an operating room scrub nurse at Deaconess Hospital, since demolished. A great job to help me realize I really didn't want to become an MD. What to do? Fast forward to senior year, fall of 73, and I needed a job for spending money. The organic food movement was starting to hum along, and the first health food store in Evanston, Illinois, the Green Earth, was hiring. And I was looking. I ended up working there, getting interested in nutrition and organic food via my biology interest, and decided to go to graduate school in human nutrition. Hence, the University of Minnesota was my next step. I ended up pursuing nutritional biochemistry based on advice from my graduate advisor. That led to a stint at Columbia University's Medical School Institute of Human Nutrition, and that led to a faculty position at Rutgers University, its Department of Nutritional Sciences. I gradually slid away from that burning light that was environmental sustainability as life got busy and I got distracted. My hat is off to those in my generation who have never gotten distracted. Then 1989, and I received tenure at Rutgers. Now what? More of the same. I had an NIH grant, I was publishing, but it really wasn't that fulfilling. And honestly, I didn't think I was that good in the lab, although I liked working there. So I decided to go back to my roots, to my garden, so to speak, and took a sabbatical, partially at the Land Institute in Salina, Kansas, where I met my wonderful wife, Lisa, and partially at Rodale Institute in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. My goal was, in abbreviated form, to see if I could combine my love of nutrition, my passion for environmental sustainability, and my Catholic desire for social justice into the next phase of my career. This, by the way, is the former battery shed for a wind power system at the Land Institute that was my office for 6 months. And in the wintertime, I had to fire up the wood stove before my computer would turn on. By the end of 1992, I was married to my lovely wife, Lisa, whom I met in Kansas, and embarked on a new journey that went from closing my lab to developing research and engagement around sustainable and local food systems. During this time, we developed 2 programs at Rutgers. The New Jersey Urban Ecology Program, which started as a community gardening program in New Brunswick public housing communities. And based on conversations with the adults in that community gardening program who said, can you do something for our youth? We also then developed programs for at-risk youth and teens. The Youth Farm Stand Project, which taught high school youth how to market and sell produce and learn business skills. Children's Gardening Program and the Schoolyard Ecology Program. During this time, we also developed the Cook College Student Organic Farm at Rutgers in collaboration with a group of students who were interested in having a place where they could learn something about agriculture and how to produce food. Because even though Rutgers is the land grant of New Jersey, Cook College, the traditional college of ag for the college, had almost no students who grew up on farms. It was important for me to blend research with engagement, both in the community and on the campus, with community members and with college students. During this period, I also developed for myself the notion of what engagement in a community, whether it's a community outside the campus or inside, means. It means being able to listen and developing a sense of where people you're engaged with are coming from, and it means being a supportive yet critical partner. Bringing the criticality of science in a reflective way to problems and issues people face while being supportive and engaging with people where they are, not where you want them to be. With the Student Organic Farm, this was about creating an environment where students with no farming background could have time to explore what farming and food production are about, but be held to an ethic of producing for people. From 1994 to 2002, this meant an annual cycle of vegetable production for a market of CSA shareholders. Some purchased individually by families at Rutgers, and some purchased by the Princeton Food Bank via a local philanthropic foundation. A number of students from that farm, undergraduates at Rutgers, went on to stay in the sustainable food realm, and I'm proud to say that I know of 2 are tenured at universities and conducting research around sustainability in the food system. One is the faculty advisor of the student organic farm at her institution. One runs food relief programs in Africa with Catholic Relief Services. One has run a nonprofit, several are teachers. The farm still continues at Rutgers, I'm proud to say. One other side with NJUAP is that I was privileged to work with a number of phenomenal people who were passionate about what they did and did it really quite well. One now runs Elijah's Promise Soup Kitchen in New Brunswick. Why and what did I get from this? Well, I learned a lot about myself and both what I needed to let go of and what I needed to gain. I needed to let go of control and developed a mantra for myself that has helped me all these years. The more you let go, the more you get. I will admit that in my early days of co-developing these programs, I was far too ego-driven and unfortunately made some mistakes as a result and damaged some relationships. I regret those and promised myself I would try to not make the same mistakes again. Fast forward to 2002, and along came a search for the C.S. Mott Chair for Sustainable Agriculture at MSU. The short story is, I applied, I interviewed, I was offered, I accepted. The longer story is much more complicated, and we don't have time here. MSU is a major land-grant university. The College of Ag and Natural Resources, where I sit, is ranked number 8 in the world, with Michigan having a large acreage and diversity of agriculture. When I left New Jersey, there were 800,000 acres of farmland in New Jersey. In Michigan, there's 12 million. Over my 15 years at MSU with the C.S. Mott Group for Sustainable Food Systems, which then became the Center for Regional Food Systems, I have been blessed to work with a continuing string of wonderful, passionate people. We have both done good work and not gotten very far relative to where Pope Francis has encouraged us to go. I'm going to mention a few of the highlights and want to be clear, this is not me, but with the endowed chair and its resources, I have been able to help catalyze the hiring of terrific people who were then able to do good work. Some of the highlights include helping develop the Michigan Food Policy Council by Governor's executive order, co-leading development of the Michigan Good Food Charter, catalyzing farm-to-school efforts across Michigan, seeding hoop houses for health program, which gets technology of unheated hoop house technology on farmers' fields, and they then return that in food to low-income families and Head Start families. And catalyzing networks across the state of Michigan, among many others. Over the last few years, I've gotten more and more interested in global issues of regional and city region food systems. I've had the privilege of getting to work with people throughout the UNEP program I mentioned and others. It's hard to appreciate the level of effort across the globe that people put into just existing. It needn't be this hard for anyone, and it requires tremendous change on the part of us as Catholics, as Christians, as Americans, and as a part of humanity. It requires using our Jesuit education as a platform for examination. It requires our honest examination of the common good. As Pope Francis enjoins us, I urgently appeal then for a new dialogue about how we are shaping the future of our planet. We need a conversation which includes everyone, since the environmental challenges we are undergoing and its human roots concern and affect us all. Regrettably, many efforts to seek concrete solutions to the environmental crisis have proved ineffective, not only because of powerful opposition, but also because of a more general lack of interest. Obstructionist attitudes, even on the part of believers, can range from denial of the problem to indifference, nonchalance, resignation, or blind confidence in technical solutions. We require a new and universal solidarity, end quotes. As we celebrate 200 years of SLUH, let's also celebrate the challenge Pope Francis set for us, to live a truly Christian life that recognizes our role as environmental stewards and champions for the right of all humanity to a dignified life. In closing, I'd like to end with the prayer which Pope Francis ended Laudato Si. Father, we praise you with all your creatures. They came forth from your powerful hand. They are yours, filled with your presence and your tender love. Praise be to you. Son of God, Jesus, through you all things were made. You were formed in the womb of Mary. You were formed in the womb of Mary, our mother. You became part of this earth, and you gazed upon this world with human eyes. Today you are alive in every creature in your risen glory. Praise be to you. Holy Spirit, by your light, you guide this world towards the Father's love and accompany creation as it groans in travail. You also dwell in our hearts, and you inspire us to do what is good. Praise be to you. Triune Lord, wondrous community of infinite love, teach us to contemplate you in the beauty of the universe, for all things speak of you. Awaken our praise and thankfulness for every being that you have made. Give us the grace to feel profoundly joined to everything that is. God of love, show us our place in this world as channels of your love for all the creatures of this earth, for not one of them is forgotten in your sight. Enlighten those who possess power and money, that they may avoid the sin of indifference, that they may love the common good, advance the weak, and care for this world in which we live. The poor and the earth are crying out. O Lord, seize us with your power and light. Help us to protect all life, to prepare for a better future, for the coming of your kingdom of justice, peace, love, and beauty. Praise be to you. Amen. And thank you.
Oh, that's a picture of Dr. Ham's grandmother, who is still young at 110. Thank you, Dr. Ham, for your address. Thank you, Dr. Ham, for your address that helps these young men reflect from the stage in the classroom that you once sat in, to your influence in New Jersey and Michigan, to a vision for the world that links itself to Laudato Si. Thank you for the time you've put into this. And thank you again to these alumni who are back from all across the country to talk about, thank you, gentlemen, ways in which they influence the common good. So at this time, what I'm going to invite our guests to do, our alumni, is to go ahead and with their student ambassador, head to the place where they will be doing their presentations, and ask you all to sit tight, and then Dr. Kesterson will dismiss you. Thank you.